You're listening to A Slice of Therapy with me, Alun Parry. So in today's podcast, I'm going to be showing you how to be powerful. Now, there are just 3 things that you need to focus on when it comes to understanding how to be powerful. The first is power itself. The second is contribution. And the third is requests. And so once you understand power, contribution, and requests, then you'll know yourself how to be powerful in the world. So let's look at the first one, which is power itself. So what is it that I mean by power? Well, the way I define power is the ability to get your needs met with ease. So that's my definition of power, the ability to get your needs met with ease. Now, every human being has needs. Sometimes they're physical needs, sometimes they're relational needs, like a need for connection and togetherness. Sometimes they're spiritual needs. Whatever those needs are, we all have them, and we're all trying to get them met throughout our lives. And so power, as I see it, is that a powerful person is able to get their needs met, but crucially, is able to do that with ease. Now, to understand power, it's worth knowing that there are 2 main power models that you can choose. The first power model is the power over model. Now, the power over model is something that you'll find it very easy to find examples of. You'll see it on the news, you'll see it in your workplace, all over. And the power over model means that a person gets their needs met by having dominion over another person. So they'll be powerful over another person. They'll be able to bully that person or threaten that person or coerce that person in some way, maybe even bribe that person. But it's all about one person essentially forcing or strong-arming another person into doing what they want. And so someone who operates on a power over model will get their needs met, but not with ease. And so power over, I'd say, is the weakest form of the 2 power models. And it's weak because it demands force in order for that person to get their needs met. And not only does that demand force, but it actually takes away any desire from other people to meet their needs. They're doing it because they have to. But there's another form of power, which is the power with model. Now, the power with model doesn't use force, doesn't use coercion, but the power with model is more powerful because we get our needs met without having to put so much effort into doing it. And the reason why the power with model is a more powerful model out of the 2, in my opinion, and certainly a more ethical one, but more powerful too, because it has that ease. And the reason it has ease is that a power with model depends upon the other person actually wanting to meet your needs. Now, you might think, well, how can I go around with just hoping that everybody wants to meet my needs? And that brings us to the second point that we're going to look at today, which is contribution. So far you've seen that there are 2 power models. Power over, which is one of dominion, the boss bullying the worker, for instance, the government telling the citizens what to do, the power over model, or the power with model where people will meet your needs freely. And the key to that is the second part of today's podcast, which is contribution. Now, if you understand contribution, then it will lead you to becoming more powerful, but with that second model, the recommended model of power with. Recommended because it makes you more powerful, and also because it's just more ethical, because you're not forcing or compelling anybody to do anything. And so what do I mean by contribution? Contribution is where we increase the well-being of another person, that we do something to add to the well-being of another person. And the key thing to know about contribution is that it is, in my opinion, one of our deepest human needs. The need to contribute to the well-being of other people is one of our deepest, most cherished needs. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, what about the need for food, or the need for water, or the need for shelter? Well, they're all important, obviously, and they're physical needs. But when I'm talking in terms of the kind of very deep human needs, the kind of relational, spiritual needs, even emotional needs, the need to contribute to somebody else is one of our deepest ones. And once you understand that, then it makes sense of the idea that the power with model has a lot more power and a lot more ethics to it. Now, what I want you to do is to think, just to kind of give an example, I want you to think of a time recently where you did somebody a small act of kindness. Now, it doesn't have to be major. Perhaps somebody dropped something on the floor as they were walking past. And even though you didn't need to, you just picked it up and raced after them and gave it to them. Maybe somebody was coming through the door and you just held it open for them. It doesn't have to be a big thing. But it's a question that when I do workshops, I ask the people, what, for a random act of kindness, just to think of one and tell it to the room. And what I guarantee is that if you ask this of another person yourself, or when you think of it yourself and retell it, you will smile. Because everybody smiles in the workshop as they're talking about the thing that they did for somebody else, simply because they wanted to do it. And the reason why everybody smiles when they retell that story of something that they did for somebody else simply because they wanted to, they smile because it is meeting one of their most deepest human needs, which is the need to contribute to the well-being of other people. So when you understand that this is something that makes people smile, what it actually means is that not only is our deepest need, but it's really fun. It's fun to do this, so long as there's not coercion, so long as there's not compulsion. Now, if you think of a time where you were forced to do that, or compelled to do it, or threatened to do it, then there's a whole different energy. That's not fun at all. Nobody smiles when they share how they might have added to somebody's well-being, but they did it under coercion. Nobody smiles at that. And so what you're understanding here is the key thing about contribution is that it's fun. As long as it's given freely, it's fun. And the key thing to understand about that is that we actually have an innate desire to do good things for other people. We have an innate desire to meet the needs of other people. Because when we do that, and we do it from a free energy, not out of compulsion, but out of a free energy, it gives us a great deal of meaning. Now, the other day, somebody contacted me and thanked me for something that I did. I really enjoyed that thank you. And we like to hear positive feedback from people, don't we? Whether that comes in the form of words, or maybe a little card, or maybe something that somebody pays us for even. And the reason we like this feedback is because it is appreciation. But the real reason why we like to be appreciated is because it tells us that we've made a contribution. When somebody contacts you and says, "Oh, thanks so much for doing that the other day. It really helped me out. It was so important to me. I was in a real kind of difficulty, and then you did that, and it was just great. Thank you very much. What they're actually saying there is you made a contribution. What they're telling you is that deep need that you have to make a contribution actually happened, and so you feel good. And so once you understand that you have an innate desire to contribute to others, that it gives you meaning, that it feels fun, so long as it's not forced, then guess what? That means that everybody else on the planet also has an innate need to contribute too. And so whenever you ask them to meet your needs, you're actually not doing something that will put them out. You're giving them an invite to play the most fun game that there is. Because the most fun game that there is for them is to contribute to the well-being of somebody else. And so what we've seen so far is that there's two different types of power. There's power over, which is a very forced, compelled, difficult thing, really, that needs a lot of effort. And there's power with, which is a lot easier and doesn't require you to bully anybody. And the reason why you can use power with is because of the second thing we learned, which is about contribution, that it's one of our deepest human needs. And we all find it fun. As long as we're not being compelled to, it's fun to meet someone else's need. And you saw that example of the random act of kindness. How much fun that was to kind of think of again. And so that leads us into the third thing. Like, how do you actually put this power with, into effect? And the way you do that is by using requests. So what do I mean by a request? Well, a request is not a demand. A request is basically an invite. And it's an invite that has no consequences. It's an invite that basically says, here I am offering a gift to you. And that gift is to invite you to add to my well-being in some way. And then the other person can say yes, or they can say no. And if they say no, that's okay. But we're inviting them to do something so long as it is joyful for them. Now, demand is very different, isn't it? A demand is, you do this or else. How many times have we heard that? You do this or else. Now, does that result in nurturing the innate desire we have to help others? Or does that result in crushing it completely, switching it? So the last thing that we want to do is to meet their needs. So a request is basically an invite to play the fun game. To say, here's an opportunity to contribute to my well-being. I understand that's a really fun game for you, so it's a nice invite, and I only want you to do it if it's going to be joyful for you. So that's what a request is. You see, the real key to having power with people rather than power over people is that because we all have this innate desire, all that we really need to do to be powerful is to keep that innate desire intact. When we keep that innate desire intact, then they're going to want to meet our needs, just as when your innate desire to help others is intact, you're going to want to do that too. Now, you might be saying, well, they're not automatically going to do that. What if they say no? And that's a good point. But the reason why people say no when they're given a free invite isn't because they don't want to help you, isn't because they're being selfish. It is for a very good reason that people say no. And the reason why people say no is simple. That they have needs that's getting in the way of the yes. And so understanding this, that once you've made a request rather than a demand, people will say no. Once you understand that all they're really saying there is, well, I'd love to be able to meet your needs because it's a fun game, but I have these needs that get in the way of me saying yes. It means that rather than ending the conversation there, you can actually explore them, because something wonderful could now happen. Now you both have an opportunity to meet each other's needs. What started off as an invite from you to them, an invite for them to play the fun game of meeting your needs, now becomes a mutual invite. Their no is an invite back to you to see if you can meet theirs. Now, you might not always need to, and you might not actually be the person that they want to meet their needs. But it opens up this wonderful possibility. So, for example, if I were to say to you, I'm feeling a bit lonely tonight and I really have a need for connection and togetherness, and so it would be lovely if you'd like to come round. Now, the person who says no might say, I'm unable to, so no, I'm not going to be able to do that. And if I explore the no to try and find out what's getting in the way of the yes, they might say, well, the thing is, I've got all this work to do today and I'm not going to get it done by the evening. What it allows is for you to say, well, is there anything I can do that doesn't mean that you have to do it, which means that I can help you and we can still have the time together this evening? Now you might get a yes. And so the key thing here in terms of making requests and understanding that there are needs behind the no is it actually opens up a game that we can all play together. So what you've learned here is that a request is a threat-free way of asking for your needs to be met. That a request invites the other person to play the fun game only so long as it's joyful. And a request actually has another great benefit, which is that it might procure a no. And in that no, you then get the opportunity to both play that game for each other. So let's recap what we've looked at today. In order to be powerful, there's 3 different things that you need to be aware of. First is power. Second is contribution. And third is requests. So in power, we looked at 2 different models. The power over model, which, has, say, the boss bullying the worker, forcing the worker to do what they want. Or somebody guilt-tripping a friend, for instance, is part of the power over. Or you can have the power with. And the power with is based on an understanding that there's a deep need in us to give contribution. We saw that when we get a thank you or when someone gives us appreciation back, the reason why we like that is because it confirms that we did make a contribution, and so that makes us feel good. And we also saw how making a contribution is a really fun game. And the way that you can verify this yourself is to ask a friend about a time recently where they did a little thing for somebody that was kind, and just see their face bloom and light up in joy as they recount it. And the third thing that we saw was the importance of making requests rather than demands. Because by making a request rather than twisting someone's arm, what we're actually doing is keeping that innate desire to meet our needs, if they possibly can, intact. When you think about times where you've been judged or criticised or name-called, do you really want to meet that person's needs? What happens to your deepest need to contribute to their well-being? It gets taken away. So real power is simply about leaving our innate desire to help each other intact. And so when we make requests rather than demands, what it actually is an invite to play a really fun game, so long as it is joyful for that other person. And finally, we saw that no, which is a very common response to a request, and a perfectly okay one, that no can often open up a mutual game, whereby getting to the needs behind the no, it gives you an opportunity to play the game as well, so that you end up with everybody's needs getting met. And so if you like this idea, then please share it so that others can get the benefits as well. If you'd like to work with me directly, I'm Alun Parry. You can find out more at liverpoolpsychotherapy.co.uk. And I work online, so it doesn't matter what your location is, I can still work with you. And please do subscribe to the podcast, because it means that you'll never miss an episode again, and it's completely free. So thanks for listening, and I'll be back again tomorrow with another one.